book lovers, it's Jenny at Julia Baby Jen, and this is December Monthly Recommends. Okay, so I just discovered this group called Monthly Recommends. It's a Goodreads group, and it's for your BookTube channel or your blog if you want to use it that way. And they have a theme every month to do, and this month's theme is your favorite new to me authors. So their favorite new to you authors that you read in 2016, whether they're a debut author or just an author you discovered this year. And you can do it any way you want. I am going to do a little combination of both. And here is the books that I recommend with some new authors. The first author that I would recommend is Heidi Heilig. She's a 2016 debut author with the book The Girl from Everywhere. This is a time travel kind of story aboard a ship, and as such there's a lot of historical aspects to it as well, and lots of adventure. Basically, this is about Nyx and her father. Her father could travel anywhere in time and space as long as he's with his ship, as long as he's a map for it. So it can be anything mythological or anything that was a real map from way back when. His goal is to get back to 1868 Honolulu. So he's looking for this map that's almost impossible to find, to reclaim his bride. He married Nyx's mother and sailed off, and when he came back, Nyx was born, about a year old, and Nyx's mother had died. And so his goal is to get back before she died so he can spend forever after with his true love. Nyx, meanwhile, does help him with his journeys. She does a lot of the research and a lot of the fact-finding, and she has a way with the maps as well. And she is scared to get back to 1868 Honolulu because she's afraid she will disappear because of a paradox. So it's a really interesting story. I really loved it. It was a cool premise. It was fun adventure. It was very detailed, and yeah, this was a fun one. The next author I have to recommend is Katharine McGee. She is also a 2016 debut author with the book The Thousandth Floor. This is a sci-fi futuristic story. It's a suspense / contemporary. It follows 5 young adult teens. You're split between their different perspectives that live in this wonderful tower in New York City. It's huge. It's like its own city, this tower, and it's on what used to be Central Park. What I love about this one is the sci-fi element. The technology was great, and the world building, everything was so detailed, and then the mystery itself was so complex, and the way it was written just kept you wanting to keep reading it. And I really loved the writing. I loved everything about this. So this was an amazing debut. One of the best first books I've ever read. The next author I recommend is Kerri Maniscalco with her debut book this year, Stalking Jack the Ripper. This is a story about Audrey, a teenage girl who was born into society. This takes place in London the same time as Jack the Ripper. And her mother has died, and she is fascinated with death. She's an amazing math and science girl. She's incredibly smart, and she wants to be a forensic. She's studying forensics basically, and her uncle is helping her do it. In the middle of all this, Jack the Ripper is happening in London, and her uncle is an expert that the police are using to try to help solve the crime, and she kind of gets wrapped up in this whole mystery as well. And so it just has a really good mystery element. It's very creepy. It's got the historical fiction vibe, but with a good mystery, and I really liked this. Next I have Alison Goodman. I read her book The Dark Days Club, which is a 2016 release. She is not a debut author. She's been around for a little while. But this is basically kind of a steampunk story. It takes place in London in 1812, I believe, and it is following a young girl who is part of society and thinks everything's great, and soon discovers that there's more to the world with demons, and she is a part of this world that she's not aware of. It kind of reminded me a little bit about Clary and how she discovered she's part of the Shadowhunters. So she's part of the Dark Days Club, and she does not sure she wants to be, and it's pretty dark and creepy. This was a really big book, but it was a really good book. I really enjoyed it. I love steampunk in general, and it's fun when you add in monsters and things like that. So this was a really fun read. The next author I recommend is Paulina Simons. I finally read The Bronze Horseman this year, which is a historical fiction romance, a very big, hefty book, and it was so good. It takes place during World War II in the siege of Leningrad, about a girl who lives there with her family and is trying to survive the horror of the war. She meets a soldier that actually her sister is dating, and they fall in love, but she's determined not to break him up with her sister, so they meet in secret, and it's about their love story. It's all kinds of drama and spans a long time, and it's really good. And I especially really loved getting into Russia during World War II and learning more about the siege of Leningrad, which was just terrible, terrible. But yeah, I'm hoping I'm going to finish. She has 2 more books in this trilogy, and I would like to finish those in 2017. I really thought she was an amazing author. Shannon McGuire. I read Every Heart a Doorway this year and loved it. It's about Eleanor's West Home for Wayward Children. No solicitations, no visitors, and no guests. Basically, she keeps a home for troubled children who have disappeared through the door, through the wardrobe, or whatever it be, to a magical land, and then been given back to our world and are trying to cope with reality when all they want to do is go back to that magical world. So I was a girl named Nancy, and she ends up at this home, and right after she gets there, a murder happens. So it's kind of a mystery in this as well. This is an adult read. It seems like it would be a YA, but it's not. It's very adult. There's language and very graphic violence with the murders. But it made it all the more interesting. It was one of the most interesting books I've read this year. It was so good, and I couldn't quit turning pages. So yeah, this one was really fun, and I'm really excited for the sequel that comes out in 2017. I finally read Tolkien this year. I finally read The Hobbit by J.R.R. Tolkien, and I absolutely adored it. I don't think I really need to give too much of a premise. This is a fantasy in his Middle-earth fantasy world, and so this is kind of a prequel to The Lord of the Rings. I'm hoping to read The Lord of the Rings in 2017, but I did read The Hobbit. I really loved it. As a fantasy lover, it was kind of a shame I hadn't read him yet, but now I have, and I would recommend him to other fantasy lovers if you haven't read him, which I think most people have, but if you haven't, definitely worth reading. Recommend Holly Bodger. I read her book 5 to 1 this year and was really impressed with it. I read it during a short books week, and I just happened to see it at the library and saw it was short, so it fit my theme, and so I tried it. This takes place in the future in India, and it's basically a dystopian society, but instead of now where women are kind of thrown away, there's too many women in the world, and so women are treated not well. In this case, it's men. It's a matriarch society, and women control everything, and there's a ton of them and not enough men, and the men have to compete for women's hands in marriage. It's a really backward way of looking at things, and as a feminist myself, I was really intrigued by this because obviously it's not good to have it go either way. Everybody should be equal no matter what your sex, but this was a fascinating story. And the other thing that's lovely about it is it's written in prose, and the pages flew by, and it's just a beautiful read. So if you like prose reading, I definitely recommend this one. And if you like dystopians, I recommend this one as well. I finally read Victoria Schwab this year, and I've been wanting to read her forever. This year I just read one book by her, The Savage Song, and I loved this book so much. A lot of people have compared this to a Romeo and Juliet retelling, which I can kind of see that a little bit. It is about a city that's been divided into two, with 2 different ruling families on each side, and the son and daughter of the ruling families meet and team up. However, there is no romance of any kind in this book. They kind of form a bond, but it's a shaky one, and it's more of a respect and friendship type of bond. There's no romance going on as of yet in the story. I don't know if that'll continue in the future, but I really love that that was not the forefront. Basically, they were just trying to survive in this. This is a world with monsters, and There's 3 different kinds. One is a type of monster that's very, very rare, and that's what August Flynn is. August is our male protagonist in here, but he does not want to be a monster, and he's trying to fight it at all costs. He goes undercover at Kate's school to find out more, because she lives on the other side, and her father is the ruling father of that side, the side that is basically, he's made a deal with the monsters, and so that side has more peace, whereas the Flynn side of the city, they are still actively fighting the monsters. Kate is wants to be just like her father, ruthless and terrible like he is. He's sort of a mob boss type guy, but she really isn't. So it's about both of these people trying to find out who they are, and also save the city, save their family, save themselves. And it's just a beautiful book. I mean, it's just a really interesting premise, but what's so great is the way it's written. I loved this book so much, and I cannot wait to read more Victoria Schwab, because she's an amazing author. I finally read an Ellen Hopkins book this year. I read Crank. I really, really liked it. I wasn't sure what I was expecting, but it was really good. The pages flew by. It is a contemporary. The main protagonist in this is a girl who's become addicted to crack, and her journey basically, and the things that happen to her that are horrific. It is written in prose. I believe all of Ellen Hopkins' stories are. But it just made it seem the more tragic and terrible to read it that way. I really, really do like reading stories in prose. I've read some in the past, but I finally got to Ellen Hopkins, and I'm going to be reading more of her because I really did enjoy this, heartbreaking as it was. And finally, Andy Weir. I finally read The Martian this year, which I don't know why it took me so long, but it's so good. Basically, it's about a man who's on a mission with his I don't know, NASA buddies. They're on a mission to his crew. That's the word I was looking for. They're in Mars exploring things, and there's an emergency, and they have to evacuate. And during that time, he gets left behind. His crew thinks, and NASA thinks, that he is dead. And as they describe the situation, you really don't blame them. I mean, it's miraculous he didn't die. But he's stranded on Mars, and he has to survive for 2 years until the next ship comes along to save him. And that's almost an impossible feat. So it's his journey, his story, trying to survive on Mars by himself. And it is so funny. Even though it's just terrible, you feel so bad for this man. He's a funny guy. He's incredibly smart, and he thinks outside the box, and he explains everything that he's doing to you. And he gets kind of, what's the word? He speaks a lot of shop, I guess, in this, but it was easy to follow along with it the way it was written. So it was a really, really good book. I loved it. I watched the movie too. Loved the movie. I recommend both. I think you could watch the movie and read the book, or vice versa. There's a little differences in both of them. They left out some things in the book and the movie, and then they added a little bit into the movie. So either way, it's an enjoyable experience. So yeah, definitely love Andy Weir. I hope you write some more. And that is my monthly recommends for December. Those are the authors that were new to me this year that I would really recommend. I mean, there's more, but I tried to keep it down to 10, and I ended up with 11. So anyway, let me know what new authors you discovered this year, or if you want to talk about any of these authors or any of these books. I would love to talk with you about them in the comments. I will also leave the link below to the Goodreads group. The 2 YouTubers who created this, I cannot remember their names right now, but I will leave links to all that below if you'd like to join in the fun. And I hope everyone has a good day. I will talk to you later. Bye.